Hey there, my name is Uma and this is the second part to the mini link it application video. If you're new here, I suggest you go watch the first video, which is linked up here or up here, so that you're caught up on everything we've done. In the previous video, we created the React application and made sure it had connection to the database and make sure all of that works. In this video, we'll be creating the Flask Web Server and deploying the whole application to Heroku to make sure everything works. Let's get started. For the server app, we'll do something very similar to the client app. In the root folder, we'll create a folder called URL Shortener demo server. This is what I'm calling mine. You can call yours whatever you want. I always append server to the end because it is a server. Next thing I'll do is in the server folder, I'll create a folder named app. And in that folder, I'll create a file named main.py. In main.py, we'll start writing the code for our server file. First thing we want to do is our imports. We are going to import the following items. The first would be Flask because it's a Flask server. So from Flask, we're going to import Flask. We're going to import redirect because when we get the long URL from the database, we want to redirect, hence redirect, and render template, which will help us render the build. So one thing I haven't mentioned yet is we won't be deploying two applications. We'll be deploying only one application, and we're going to use Flask to basically serve our client app. So at the end of the day, when we create a build, it'll just be one folder that has everything, the app.js, index.js, the form, and we can just use Flask to serve that. It may sound confusing now, but as I go through, it's definitely going to make sense. Just wait a little bit. We're going to import Firebase admin because we use Firebase to connect to the database, and from Firebase, we're going to import database because we're going to use the database, and we're going to use OS to get into the application operating system and render the file for the static pages for our website. Next thing we're going to do is create credentials for our Firebase. We have this service account.json key, which we'll get in a later step. But what all this does is it creates an object for a credential certificate. This just gives our Python application access to Firebase database. We'll then create a default app with the database URL. This is one from a previous application. To get your database URL, you basically come here, and this right here is your database URL. So you can just copy it and just paste it right here, and you'll have access to your database. As I said earlier, we're going to get the service.json key in a little bit. Next thing you're going to do is initialize the Flask application. Python cares about indentation, don't forget that. This is basically creating app, and we're going to set the static folder to the build that we'll create from our React app. Don't worry, we're going to deal with that. And then the template folder to the build that we're going to create too. The first route we're going to work on is the home route, which would basically redirect to app because we want it to go back to app. So the dynamic of the application is there's only two forward slashes. The application only has two routes, which would be /app, which would be the client page here based on this. So this is /app, and then when we copy this, / whatever alias would then redirect somewhere. So if someone comes to just / we want them to go to app, and that's why this method is here. Next thing we'll do is create the / app method. So if a user goes to / app, what happens is we just render the template, which is the HTML page of our built React app. We're going to build the app in a second. And finally, we have the method that actually goes to the database and redirects to the long URL. So what happens here is we have a path here that says / whatever generated key the user passes. So it would be / this key, for example. We have this method called fetch from Firebase that takes in the key. We'll get a reference for the database and we'll append the generated key to it. So in our database, it'll look like this, right? So it will be / then the key. This is the key that we're going to try to fetch. When we fetch that, we're going to get the data. If there is no data, meaning the key they give us doesn't exist, then we'll return 404 not found. Ideally, you want to return a 404 page, then redirect back to the main page, but you can handle that on your own time. Otherwise, if that data comes back, we get the long URL from the data.long URL, which is what we've uploaded here. And then we basically just return a redirect to the long URL. And that's pretty much it for the server application. We still have to do a few things for the server application. The first thing we need to do is create a file called requirements In requirements.txt, we're going to add the following requirements. These are just packages that our server needs. So the first is Flask, and then second is Firebase admin, and the last is Unicorn. These are going to be installed into a virtual environment during deployment. So we're going to save that. Next thing we're going to create is a WGSI entry for our application. So in the server root folder, we're going to create a file named wsgi.py. And in this Python folder, the first thing we're going to do is basically import our app, right? So we're saying from here, go into app.main. App.main is this folder here, and then import app, right? And we're going to basically import app from app.main. We're going to import app. That's pretty much all this is doing. This is basically a gateway into our application. The final thing in this page we're going to do is, the final thing we're going to do here is paste this, where we say if name is equals to main app.run. So it basically runs and triggers the application from here rather than the main file. Okay, next we're going to create a file called service account key.json. So the service account key.json should be the same name as you have in here. As a matter of fact, let me just copy that, rename this to make sure I got the right name, and save that. Okay. Now, to get the service account key, what you need to do is go back to your Firebase, click on settings here, click on project settings, click on service accounts. This will load for a little bit. Then click on Python. This will show up here. Then click on generate new private key. It definitely warns you, don't put this on GitHub. It's basically the secrets and certificates to get and do anything with your Firebase console. So don't put it in a public repository, don't get committed, don't do anything. So you click generate key and with VS Code here, and then just gonna copy all of this and then paste it here. You shouldn't show anyone this, by the way. I'm just showing you this because by the time this video comes out, this project won't exist anymore. I would have deleted it, but don't show anyone this key. It has your private key and it has everything. Next thing we're going to do is create a file named proc file. This is for Heroku deployment, and in our proc file, we'll basically add one line which basically looks like this. All it's doing is telling Heroku that it's a web app that would be served with Unicorn. Unicorn is used for production deployment of web applications in virtual machines, and we're telling it to go into WSGI, which is basically here, and run app, and that's pretty much all the proc file is doing. We are basically ready to run our application. So to do that, we are going to create a virtual environment. I created a video, one of my first videos on my channel was about virtual environments. I think I explained it pretty well, but essentially it's a separate development environment in your computer where if I create a virtual environment, I'll only be downloading and installing these packages for this project. And if I have another project that requires different packages, then I can just create a different virtual environment and just download those packages pretty much. So to do that, what I'll do is I'm going to cd into the server folder, and then I will run python 3 -m venv ant and then whatever name you want to give your virtual environment. I like to give mine venv as well, and this will create the virtual environment right here. Next thing you want to do is activate the virtual environment. So source venv bin activate, and now the virtual environment is activated because we see this here. We're using the virtual environment we created. We then want to install all the requirements. So we do pip install -r requirements.txt. So we're going to install these requirements into our virtual environment and click enter. It'll take some time, but it should be done like that. Now that that's done, we're going to run the server. So we're going to click clear to clear that, and we're going to do Python from the server folder where we have direct access to the wsgs.py in here. We're going to do Python wsgi.py, and boom, it's running on this port. So one thing we can do is we can test that the server has access to the database. So if we remember from our database, we have this key here. We already have this key as an input. So what we can do is then, put in our server URL, and then whatever inputs that we have here, which is this guy here, if I can copy it. And if we do this and we do /, it should redirect us to google.com. So if we do this and we do /, it works. Okay, so we have redirecting working. All right, we're almost done. Only thing left is to deploy. We're almost there, halfway there. Okay, now that we're sure that works, what we can then do is we can kill the server. We also want the Flask application to deploy our client, right? So we basically just create a React build and copy it in there and have it do it. So we basically run the command here that we're giving. So we run npm run build, and what this will do is it'll create an optimized build for us right here. Now that the optimized build has been created here, all we have to do is copy here and then paste it in our app. Just do a paste here, and now the build is here. Now, if you remember from our main.py, we told it to run the static folders in build static, which is basically our React application, and our template would be our React application. So all we have to do now is just run our thing again. And if we go endpoint for this, and we click on this and we do /, remember, / should redirect us back to app, and app should basically just redirect us to index.html, which is our React app. And bada boom, bada bang, pow, it works. Okay, almost there, almost there. Now we have to work on deploying the application. I tried Google Cloud Services to deploy it. I tried Azure. Heroku just seemed to be the easiest and cheapest one for me. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a Heroku account. So go to Heroku, Google Heroku, then I'm already logged in, so it shows all my applications. But if you're not logged in, you would have to log in. You would go to new, create app, give your app a name. This is the hardest part because everyone has taken all the good short names, but you can use whatever long name you want. Okay, so I found a name. My name is Uma's URL Shortener. I'm going to create an app called Uma's URL Shortener. Again, the idea for the whole application is you want the name of your URL to be short because it's supposed to be a mini link. I locked out and picked up minilinkit.com, which was short, but the popular ones, bit.yl, just something short, but those are already all taken pretty much. Now that we have that, all we need to do is follow the instructions. So first thing we have to do is Heroku login. I'm already logged in, but if I paste it again, it'll ask me to open a web page that I can log in. I'm already logged in, so if I just click login, it logs me in, and that's pretty much it for logging with me. The next thing we want to do is just follow the instructions that they say here. This says cd into the project and run git init. We're already in our project folder, URL Shortener demo, that's where we are. So we just have to initialize a git repository. So we run git init. It's saying we have a repo inside a repo. You can ignore this, it's something with my local machine. But then next thing you want to do is then initialize the git repo to point to Heroku upstream. So when we deploy an application, Heroku can pick up the application. So to do that, all we have to do is just copy and paste what they say. All we're doing here is pointing our remote git to Heroku's Uma URL Shortener git so that they're both in sync. So whatever we deploy from here goes up there. We click enter. Then it tells us the command to run. Then we basically copy this command, run it. Now that that's set, next thing we need to do is deploy to Heroku. Now, Heroku tells us to deploy by just adding everything, committing everything, and pushing. We can add everything. So you run git add, it adds everything. You can then do a commit, git commit -m, adding the deployed code. And then now it commits everything. Then the next thing it wants you to do is just push everything to Heroku master. But then pushing would basically have you push the client and the server. But remember, we already have a build here and we don't want to push all this code. We only want to push the build. So what we do instead is we run a different command. We run git subtree push dash dash prefix, and then our server. So URL shortener demo server, and then we do Heroku master. So what we're doing here is we're only pushing this folder because this is where our Python application is and where our React client is, right? The build, the production version of our React client. This is where it is, and we only want to push this folder. That's what we're doing right here. So we're doing a subtree push for that folder, and then we're pushing it to Heroku master. And if we hit enter, it's gonna compress that and basically upload it to Heroku so that we have access to it. It's done. Okay. So essentially what has happened now is it has compressed and released our application to this URL right here. We can copy this, and if we go over to Heroku here and we go to overview, we can see all the builds that we've done. We just see that this literally just finished right now. So if we want to visit the app, we can click open app, and it should lead us to our app, the app that we just deployed. So if we click open app, it works. Okay, now the app is officially deployed. We're not done yet. Almost there, almost there, almost there, I promise, almost there. So if you remember, our app has minilink.com, and that's not the actual URL for our application. So what we need to do is replace minilink.com with our actual long URL here, and that's super easy. Essentially what we do is we basically just copy this here. As I stated, it is a long URL, and the idea for the app is supposed to be a short URL. So if you can find something shorter, that'll work better ideally. As I said, I picked up minilink.com super quickly and connected my own personal domain to Heroku. That's why it still shows minilinkit. But what you can do is you can basically copy this here, go into the source file, components, form.js. This is the only place that we need to replace that. We're going to search for minilinkit, and we're going to replace minilinkit everywhere, right? Because that's the web page. So we're going to replace it with whatever our domain name is. So it's going to be Uma's URL shortener.heroku.app, or in your case, it could be whatever domain you buy or whatever domain you use. And that's one, that's two, and there's another minilinkit here again. So we need to replace that. Oops. Now that should be done. Deploying this again is as simple as cding into the client. So URL shortener client, run npm run build, and this will create an optimized build with the changes we've made because we've saved it. And then when that's done, we basically delete the old build that we have here in our server application, move it to trash. We copy the new build. This has been overwritten, sorry, and then we paste it here. And then now we do a git add git status. Sorry, we go back one step so we can add the changes we've made to the server. So we do a git add, we do a cd back, so cd to the previous directory, we do a git add, then we do a git status. Then we can see that there's changes to the build itself, which is good. Then we do a git commit -m, changes to URL name. So we do a commit, and then we do, rather than push, we basically run the previous command. We basically run the previous command we did to push that subtree for Heroku master, and it'll compress. Everything has been compressed, and it'll create an optimized build and push it to our app. Quick point about this, it usually doesn't take this long. I accidentally pushed my virtual environment, which is a really big file, and the Py cache as well. So usually what you want to do is have a git ignore file where these two can go, or you can delete this, and Heroku itself is going to create its own virtual environment. That's why it's taking so long to deploy, but it usually doesn't take this long. It's way faster. Okay, now that it's done, if we go here now to our page, our deployed app, if we refresh this, this should change from minilink.com to whatever we had before, and boom, it's now the long name. As I said, it's supposed to be a URL shortener. It's supposed to be shorter, but you know, it's free, right? It's free. Come on, this is what we're given to work with. So, say we want to redirect to https://umaabu.com, and we click mini link it, it turns umaabu.com into a smaller link, which is good. Now if we click copy and we go up here and we paste it, and it should go to, if it goes to umaabu.com, it works. Okay, we are done. Finally, we have to test the alias one just to make sure that works as well. Let's do test, and if we mini link it, okay, it created one with test, and if we copy that as well and we paste it, there you have it, guys. We're done. It works. Great job. There you have it. You've built your own fully functioning URL shortener. As I said earlier, the name is a little bit longer than usual, but it's free, right? It's what we're getting. If you want to take it a step further, you could buy your own custom domains, something short and catchy. I used minilinkit.com. You could use whatever you want. There's Google Domains, GoDaddy. You can go to wherever you want and buy it. You could also try to find a shorter name on Heroku, but bear in mind that whatever name you get on Heroku is going to be the name.herokuapp.com. So eventually it won't be that short, but you can just get your own custom domain and link it directly. Don't forget to add the project to your portfolio. It may seem like a small project, something that's been done before. There's TinyURL, there's BitYL, there's a bunch of other ones, but the whole idea of working on a project like this is for you to work on it and do it your own way and learn something new. I hope you've learned something new, and yeah, you did it. If you've made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. This is definitely one of my longest videos ever. I didn't expect for it to be this long, but I just got carried away and got excited for it to keep working. Please and please consider subscribing and sharing the video with people who you think may find it interesting, or people who are trying to break into tech and just looking for projects to work on. We don't have to do something extravagant all the time. We could just work on something small and learn and pick up one or two things that are new. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Peace.